Lecture 4, Self and Society. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. What do you do? These are all common ways that we come to know people we interact with on a day-to-day basis. In many cases, this means there is something more than meets the eye. Think about this first. How much do you know about someone simply by looking at their mannerisms or their way of dressing? Are they a nervous or confident person? How do you know? Look at the way that they speak to you. Do they defer or yield to you, for instance? Does the dress denote someone who has a lot of money, someone from the city, someone from the country? We may follow up our initial assessments of people with more specific questions, either to confirm or update our initial assessments of those people. The challenge of getting to know someone is that they are made of many things, and those things are changing even in the process of getting to know them. It is in this process, the process of identifying ourselves and others, that we will be reviewing in this chapter. Lecture 4, Self and Society. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. What do you do? These are all common ways that we come to know people we interact with on a day-to-day basis. In many cases, this means that there is something more than meets the eye. Think about this first. How much do you know about someone simply by looking at their mannerisms or their way of dressing? Are they nervous or are they confident? How do you know? Look at the way that they speak to you. Do they defer or yield to you, for instance? Does their dress denote someone who has a lot of money, someone from the city or country? We may follow up our initial assessments of people with more specific questions, either to confirm or update our initial assessments of those people. The challenge of getting to know someone is that they are made of many things, and those things are changing even in the process of getting to know them. It is this process, the process of identifying ourselves and others, that we will be reviewing in this chapter. In some ways, this is the most important lecture of the class. There will be a lot of terms, but if you take the material seriously, you will find some value in it for the rest of your life. It will equip you with the ability to understand how to accept or reject elements of yourself as well as other people. You will have the tools to make your own DIY self-change program, because they are the things that they use in books to encourage other people to develop their sense of self. The Looking Glass Self. One of the most famous social psychologists in sociology is George Simmel. He developed the idea of the looking glass self, because mirrors are not perfect reflections of our face, but we still rely on them to help us put on makeup, tie a tie, and prepare how we look to other people. In a similar way, we use society to judge our sense of self, how good or bad we are, and to make decisions about ourselves. The person we see in this social mirror can be very similar to who we really are or not. The first step in a DIY self-repair is to get a more accurate picture of what other people think of us. Research shows that it is usually more positive than you think. One thing we know for sure is that our position in society has a large influence on our perceptions of who we are. Linking roles and traits. In psychology, they study both personality and identity. Personality is usually considered a biologically inherited set of traits. We won't focus on that, but on identity, because it is equally important to understanding ourselves and other people, but it is social in origin. One of the many direct impacts of society on our sense of self are the roles that we inhabit. We identify ourselves in specific roles, and once in those roles, we follow the expectations of them. Some simple examples include parents. Should a parent provide income and resources to their children or not? Are they good or bad? Are they supposed to be loving or not? What would you call a parent who did not do those things? Even parents who don't do these things, even when they have excuses, don't think highly of themselves for failing at these roles. Society creates these expectations, and we may follow them or not. But if not, we must produce a good reason for not following them. Not only do we accept roles for ourselves, but project them onto other people. What do you think a typical lawyer is like? Is she good or bad? You get the point. From the SI perspective, meaning making is everywhere, including other people and the roles they inhabit. Roles, both our own and other people, also include emotional meanings. Consider some of the roles we have talked about. What emotions do we attribute to those people? The parents and the lawyer, for instance. Are they supposed to be nice or mean? Add a new role. What do you expect of a military veteran? Application, the 20 statements test. Okay, this is where the rubber meets the road again, so to speak. The 20 statements test. You don't have to do all 20, but answer the question, who am I, at least 10 times. Just do it. If you completed this form, I think you will notice two sets of answers come out the most. Traits and roles. Traits are easy. They are things like being confident or nice. Roles can be things like son or daughter, but also group affiliations like race. Which ones did you write down first? These aspects of your identity are probably most important to you, at least right now. The things in this test reflect your identity. The traits, the roles, and social identities that you carry around with you when you're deciding what to eat. Does a vegetarian go to a hamburger restaurant? Who to date or even marry? Would you date someone from a very different set of beliefs than your own? And even the words coming out of your mouth. Does a devout Muslim take Allah's name in vain? Personality tests abound, but there are a few other ways to get a glimpse of your roles in society. It is very important, though. It really does impact your life, maybe even more than your personality. The TST includes some element of your personality too. The real question is the relative value of knowing that you see yourself as a teacher and kind. Which of these has the most impact on your decisions? If you follow this lecture, you will accurately guess that the answer is both, and under some social circumstances, you will use both, while in other conditions, at home watching television, neither. Humans are active thinking beings, not robots who follow programming. Identity theories. Identity theories include any theory that tries to link our personal sense of self with the larger culture. Identity theory, as it's named, focuses on how our roles and statuses impact our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. People develop their identities based on their positions in society. The statuses we choose are part of our sense of self. They convey information to other people about the type of person we are. This is more than just knowing something about ourselves. Identity theories help us predict our own behaviors and the behaviors of the people around us. Once we accept our positions into our sense of self, they help us to make decisions on how to think, feel, and behave in different situations. You have some freedom to act against these expectations, but it may not stop people from expecting it from you. Have you ever been stereotyped by someone for being from a certain background? It could be a racial or religious group, or even a hobby, for instance, punk rock, like in the picture. How did it make you feel? Social identity theory. Do you belong to a group that is important to you? It may be a family, but also a racial or ethnic group. It could also be a religious group. Social identity theory focuses on the role of groups in our identities. It works in two ways. First, we actively use groups as a way to identify ourselves. Secondly, group dynamics like cohesion and loyalty impact our ways of thinking and acting. First, we use group identity to share about ourselves with other people. Being Irish or Jewish both connects us to people from those groups, but is something we may tell other people as a way of sharing something important about us. In this sense, group affiliations act very much like our statuses and roles. Group dynamics vary from roles in a couple of ways. First, our relative status in a group impacts the degree to which we act on a group identity. If we are a high-level person in the Catholic Church, we're much more likely to carry symbols and act on that group identity than someone who only goes to church a few times a year. In addition, group pressures act on us in a way that does not exist with roles themselves. That is, when we are in a group, the people in that group can pressure us to conform to that group identity. Consider a situation in a gang in which a member is considering harming another person. This person may not want to do it, but as a member of the group, that is what he's supposed to do. In this case, he does not want to do it, but feels pressure inwardly to follow the norms, but also outwardly from other people in the group, literally encouraging the person to act. Dramaturgy. There is one other dimension of identity that is worth mentioning: self-presentation. It works like this. We can act differently than what we feel. It may be that we feel sad, but put on a smile. It can go even further. We can pretend to have different roles, statuses, and group affiliations than we really do. Have you ever pretended to have more experience on the job in order to get hired? This may appear wrong to people, somewhat dishonest, but it need not be. Consider someone doing surgery or flying an airplane for the first time. There are always firsts. You can't be something until you've done it. We have to practice new roles in life, and that requires acting a part before you fully incorporate it into your sense of self. Counselors spend hundreds of hours working under a licensed counselor before she or he thinks of themselves as a counselor. Then one day, an outside agency decides that you know enough to be a real counselor. Society is in on this process from the start by creating roles, in this case counselor, and then providing guidelines to indicate when you can officially accept those roles into your sense of self, like a certificate that says you're a counselor. Conclusions. The concept of identity is very deep. It is multidimensional when you consider that you have traits or personality as well as roles and group affiliations. Then you have impression management, which means you can act out new roles that you really don't have. Can you predict what someone will do from their personality? Maybe. But if you add roles and statuses and group affiliations as well as impression management to the mix, you can see that it can get very complicated. Personality is not enough. You need to know the whole person, all aspects of their identity. How might you use this information to work on your own self? A DIY self-repair. First, take a look at your identity, the whole thing. Are there elements of your traits that you want to change? If so, what roles or groups may help you achieve this change? Do you want to take on a new role or status? What traits do you associate with it? Maybe you need to add those traits. Use impression management. Believe it or not, it really works. Act the part before you get the part. Like exercise or playing a musical instrument, it takes a lot of practice. The good news is that there are usually lots of people out there to help you along the way. The important thing is that you need to understand that all aspects of identity and how they intertwine if you really want to be effective at personal change. Counselors are trained to help you find strategies for this process. Regardless, try to fill out the TST or the 20 Statements test for a friend or colleague. You will likely see the rationale for his or her decisions by understanding the complex identity that they're trying to enact.